Hey everyone, my name is Alexis Fan. I'm a junior at NC State majoring in accounting. I recently learned about the use of the internet with ERP systems, like a more cloud-based approach, and I think it will be increasingly popular in the near future. So for starters, ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. This type of system integrates all of an organization's essential functions such as purchasing, human resources, production, sales, and accounting into a single information system. So I have a video that I want to show you because I think it does a better job showing the difference between a company that uses an ERP system versus a company that doesn't. I think it does a better job explaining that than I could. So I'm just going to show that really quick and then we can talk about some of the major ideas that were in the video. Okay, so you can tell a common theme in this video is that with an ERP system, your company will have a better use of its time, a more efficient use of time. So that's because ERP systems provide continuous updates from all the departments, so you're not waiting on communication between the functions. Another theme that I noticed was the satisfaction of its users, from managers to just everyday employees. Um, that's because there's reduced human error, so you spend less time going back trying to find your errors, and the software can generate reports itself instead of managers having to do it manually. Although ERP systems have been used since the 90s, it's not a new concept. The cloud-based ERP idea is more recent, and I think one of the benefits of cloud-based ERP systems, one of the main benefits is obviously the ability to access it anywhere that there's internet. With traditional ERP systems, they could only be used at the site of the company. So you had to be on a computer that was connected to the same network as the computer that had the ERP software. So there wasn't an ability to work remotely. But now companies with multiple locations can operate off of the same ERP system because they just have to be connected to the cloud. So you can see how this integration makes the flow of business processes more efficient, especially if you think about the volume of the orders that companies who are using ERPs, the volume of the orders that they're receiving is really large, and it's really important for them to have ERPs to integrate all their departments. So let's imagine this nice company of blue people. First, let's try to visualize it without the computer there in the middle connecting them. But let's just say that this company receives a large order in the sales department. And this is not really atypical. So they just go ahead and accept the order because it's just a normal activity for them. But what they don't know is someone in the production department has entered information into the production system saying that the city where their main vendor is just had an earthquake, so they're not going to be able to get the normal volume of raw materials that they usually get. So there's a potential problem because the customer could be really dissatisfied when they find out that they already placed their order, but there's going to be a large delay because there wasn't good communication between the departments. So, of course, there's the good integration side of ERP whenever all the departments can communicate together and they can get those updates real time so that there's not any miscommunication. But there are also challenges whenever you implement a new software into your business processes. So, for example, for companies that do have multiple locations, and especially companies that have international locations and people speak different languages at each of their different in each of the different countries that they operate in, that can be a really big problem because they have to develop the same exact ERP system in different languages. So whenever they create their version, they have to replicate that in a completely different language. So that's kind of, it requires more resources, and you have to consider that aspect. Another thing you really need to evaluate if you're considering cloud-based ERP is your current system and how it's going to go switching between the two, especially if you already have a traditional ERP system. Because of the way the software and the hardware is involved in the traditional ERP, you can't just like switch over to the cloud-based. I know it seems like it would be like that, but you can't just switch over. So, no matter if you already have an ERP system or if this is going to be your first time adopting one, you have to do it in stages. That's like crucial. That's another challenge that companies face because it requires a lot of resources and personnel to adopt the new system. But all these phases have to be done while the company is still operating as it normally would. So you want to have a specific person or like a group of people, depending on how large your company is, within the organization that are designated to becoming experts in the ERP, so that you have that resource within your company. And they're going to have to go through training before everyone else does, so that they can be kind of an internal resource. The process of initial configuration is really difficult. Like I said, it has to be done in phases, and you're going to need that one person or that group of people that's really familiar with the software to be like readily available, because there's going to be a lot of obstacles. The good thing is that there's room for personalization within the software, but it just takes a lot of time for all of those business processes and things to be incorporated into the software. Most of the time, you're going to have at least a few existing business practices that will have to be adjusted to fit your new system. So I just wanted to point out some familiar vendors that you might have heard of before I go through and describe the process of implementing an ERP, a cloud-based ERP specifically. So SAP, definitely probably heard of them. They're the most popular, but also the most expensive. Their clients are bringing in at least $1 billion in sales a year. So SAP is mainly for much larger companies. Oracle also has really large clients, but there are also companies, smaller companies like Encore and Epicor, that develop just as good ERP systems, but they're definitely a lot more cost friendly and for smaller companies. So, as far as the actual process of getting an ERP system to function with your business organization, I just wanted to outline the big picture and show you kind of what steps it takes to complete that process if you are actually considering a cloud-based ERP. First, you'll want to analyze your current business processes and model them exactly as they are, because you're going to compare this later on to kind of what you want your processes to be when you implement the ERP. So you're going to want to work with the consultant from your vendor, most definitely, and identify any discrepancies between how you'll function when you have the ERP and how you currently function. And then you're going to figure out how to fit your business practices as of right now with the future business practices. And if you need to, then you might have to make some organizational changes and adapt to the new ERP process. The last step, like I said, I can't emphasize it enough, it's crucial. It has to be done just right, because this is where most people fail. But the implementation, it's done in phases. So the first phase is going to be to train your employees and get them used to the new system, because they're probably going to be a little bit resistant at the beginning to the change. The second phase is the simulation of the new business processes. That will just kind of help you work out the kinks and make adjustments as needed. Then the third phase, convert the data that you have into a format that's compatible with the new ERP system. The fourth phase, convert your procedures into the way that you'll be doing things once you have the new ERP. And finally, the fifth phase, just finalize the conversion to the ERP and get that process completed. So just to recap, of course, we've seen how ERP systems can integrate all the functions of one business into one software, which is so convenient and helps increase communication across the the company. It also increases globalization. It allows companies to function in multiple countries because they can use that one software. And it creates more efficiency among the company and employee satisfaction, even though, like I said, at the time, right when it switches over, they might be not used to the way that the software works, but when they see the long-term benefits, they'll definitely appreciate it. The downside to an ERP is it's really only for large-scale companies. Like I said, you have to have at least $5 million in revenue, excuse me, not revenue, sales. Um, so it can be kind of expensive, but hopefully if you're bringing in $5 million in sales, you can afford it. Um, it's also, like I said, a challenge for companies that have multiple languages, um, and the initial configuration can be really difficult because you have to match your current system to the new ERP and figure out how you're going to change if those things don't match. So I hope you're considering an ERP, and I hope, if anything, you learned the difference between a traditional ERP and the cloud base, and how we can use the internet now to enhance what was already a good integration process using ERP.